There's a real risk and hazard of foot entrapment when we're in fast-moving water. And often that's based on trying to stand up when it's either A, too fast, or B, too deep. In this episode, we're going to talk about our different lines of defense in relation to self-rescue in the event that we find ourselves upside down and or in the water. First thing, in the event that we end up capsizing, our best line of defense of self-rescue is to roll up. Being able to roll up, keeping ourselves out of the water, exposed from rocks and things like that on the bottom, is probably the best thing that we can do for our own self-rescue. Our second line of defense, in the event that we're unable to roll, is to try and swim our way to shore. We want to make sure that we start swimming first so that we can then start to gauge a combination of both the depth and the speed of the current. Traditionally, we tell people once they're out of their boat that they should get into that whitewater flotation position with their feet up on the surface of the water, arms stretched out to the side. In fact, although that's often taught to beginner or elementary level paddlers, more advanced paddlers really never get into that position or rarely get into that position. But instead, what we want people to do is get into the idea of aggressively swimming, either on their back in a defensive position or on their stomach in an offensive position, towards shore or towards safety. Once we start swimming and we're working our way close to shore, we're going to have to start to make a judgment call on both the speed and the depth of the current. If it's slow and it's shallow, that's when we can stand up. It's important that we don't try to stand up in fast-moving water or in deeper moving water for fear of getting our foot stuck, and then we potentially have a foot entrapment. The majority of foot entrapments happen close to shore, where the water's shallow, somewhere between knee and chest deep. If we can swim towards shore, gathering all of our gear, we're going to continue as far as we can until the water is either A, sufficiently shallow, or B, sufficiently slow, that we can then consider the idea of standing up and getting ourselves together with all of our gear. The way we might attempt to stand up is by first off kicking off the bottom with the heel of our foot, rather than trying to put our foot flat on the bottom where possibly our toes could get caught or wedged between some rocks. We can also attempt to try and slow ourselves down, reducing the speed that we're moving downstream. We can do that as we swim by trying to grab onto rocks with our hands. When we talk about the depth of the current, we want to consider the idea of the water being only around knee deep. We can now stand up and grab all of our stuff. The biggest concern why we're taught to never stand up in moving water early on in our boating career is the risk of foot entrapment. And the risk of foot entrapment is something real. It's a very big problem that takes a lot of effort, a lot of ingenuity, and a lot of skill to be able to rescue someone from that type of problem. In summary, we have 3 lines of self-defense for our self-rescue while we're in the water. The first one is to try to roll. Our second is to swim. Our third, where it's shallow enough and slow enough, is to stand.